The Mac is gonna open the world infamous second Maya instance. Maya, there you are. Enter and come on. You can see that this is a pretty standard quad only, or in this case almost quad only, subdivision surface mesh. Normally I'd never combine things that are different materials. So you have to be very careful about your geometry flow. You have to make sure that on those connection points the curvature actually continues, and basically that's just not the way you'd go about this. Do edge loops. You do have to correct your shapes. So if I select all the vertices here, you have to try to keep the curvature consistent. A level deeper is the buffer. Never gonna touch the buffer. There's the master. The master is gonna be touched. Somebody is gonna animate the master directly or indirectly. If you're like me and you don't like constraining, you never know what to do with them. You move them somewhere and they will look okay. You move them somewhere else and you go, wow, it's okay, but there's a bunch of lines. You might want to use your own matrix marv or vector marv. There's basically just only another single one, that's offset parent matrix. The nth group for environment, obviously. The rig is built in a way that whenever you zero out values, everything is going to reset, be reset the way that the file was when you first opened it. It's actually locked, so if I can't push the plane below the ground, rotate it into a really crazy position if something breaks, and actually there is something breaking. Found my arc length tool for the main wheel, and for whatever reason it was removed from that node graph, which sometimes happens, shouldn't. Sometimes on Windows, and don't ask me why that happens, when Maya crashes, Maya decides to turn off the undo queue. So it was in the end quite wise to save the thing before doing the thing. So let me just reload the file. Unfortunately, you can't comment things in the node editor. It's basically calculating where the ground is, where to stop the plane, and the ground is pretty limiting for a plane in the real world as well, I say. So yeah, that's that. This is the controller for the wing bend and wing flutter. The wing bend control, flutter frequency is multiplied by the frame number, and it's multiplied by the wing bend control, wings flutter scale, etc., etc. So basically, I'm just calculating a little bit of noise based on some inputs here. A realistic tire pressure would be something like that, so they will be pushed in by the ground because the plane is heavy. Adding a little noise to the shock absorbers on the ground. That noise is actually calculated with a texture node. Does it actually rotate Z? No, I didn't set a keyframe, so yeah. That's P-Cube 2. I should have called it. Let's in fact do that. This is just ridiculous. So it's rotor, propeller, whatever, rotary thing. That's cool. That's not a propeller anymore because nothing turns that slow in the world of airplanes. But anyway, and I'm gonna save now because now we're gonna talk about the problem with that. So let me make that even more apparent. Let's put that to 100. See what happens? The motion blur completely changed. Mythological Nordic bridge, aka Bifrost, aka a little bit of Houdini for Meyer, but just a little bit. Then I'm probably gonna speed that up later so that you have a close to real time impression of that lingering, flamey, smoky thing. sometimes Maya will have to insert those unit conversions. So that's why they are here. They haven't been created by me, so Maya did this for me. And I'm gonna show you in the famous second Maya instance what that's all about and how these things came to be. That's a pretty nice animation. So let's say that's the thing that our plane is doing when it's extending its gear. How do I connect this up to this time-based animation? Well, the node editor is gonna help us with that. This unit to time conversion is gonna be created because this curve expects a time input, and this float output here is not technically a time output, but it will work. It will work. And after that you should press P, because the next time you open that thing is gonna be over there again, probably, sometimes, maybe, or your whole graph is gonna be somewhere. If they're pinned, as I said, it's okay. A lot of times I actually find it quite relaxing, at least after a long modeling session, to do some UV layout, because in the end it's just unfolding your mesh like a paper model. And actually the feeling of having a finished UV layout is quite satisfying. But this should give you a general idea how I approach this plane. And let me just delete these ridiculous things here. And in fact, let's move from the Mac to the Win. So let me just create a new camera right here, because I am going to mess up our render camera otherwise, because I like to play around with the mouse in the viewport all the time. You've just filtered your list using the keyword P51D. There are other keywords within those shaders. So there's this keyword CPT right after P51D. Those are all the cockpit shaders. That is actually pretty comfortable for shading. So you can see that this is a mix shader. So this is basically mixing two materials based on another input. So what is this input? This is basically just a black and white texture. So there can be values above 1 basically, and even below 0. So I have to kind of, as a precaution, I don't always have to, but you should really, when you're just dealing with something like an alpha mask input, I'm clamping between 0 and 1 to not have any negative or positive larger than 1 values right here. Please be faster. Maya, Arnold, all of you. So what do I want to do? I want to create a float constant node, which is a Maya node. So basically that's one of the only nodes in here that's not a native Arnold node. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pin them so they never ever even get the idea to move around this editor. Because they like to do. They kind of like have a life of their own. So you have to select your shape, you have to select it down here, so it's definitely selected. And you will go to add attributes, and you're gonna add this thing that I just mentioned before, this M2A constant spec rough. So you can see on this shader control, there are a few parameters. They're called panel rough min, panel rough max, dirt push, panel seed, and oil method. This panel will be way rougher than these panels. We'll continue to let this render, and that's the end of this video series.